Here are two ways you can seal a gouache painting. And the benefit of sealing a gouache painting is that you can display it without glass. As you can see in this painting here, there's no glass on here, so you barely get any glare at all. You can also paint on wood boards such as ampersand Aquaboard. I like painting on Aquabords. They have a nice subtle texture to them and it works really well with gouache. Before you begin, it's important to do some tests with the materials that you use, just to make sure that it doesn't smear. You also want to make sure that the surface sheen is what you're looking for. The wax medium has like a satin finish, and so does the Spectrafix, but if you apply a final coat of their natural glass product, it becomes much more glossy. So you have to experiment with those methods to see what you like best, and to make sure it's suitable with your materials. I find the easiest method for sealing a gouache painting is Dorland's wax medium. It comes in this small jar and you just wipe it on with a paper towel. I've tried different methods for applying this wax medium. I've used paper towels and I also use the cotton pads that people use for makeup. And it seems like the paper towels work the best, so that's what I'll use. So the instructions say wearing gloves and ventilation of work area is recommended. And that's because it contains mineral spirits. I looked it up in the safety data sheets. Safety data sheets will list anything that's potentially hazardous, and the only thing in here that they mention is the naphtha. When you're selecting gloves, you want to make sure that you choose one that works with the chemicals that you're working with. So here's a PDF from OSHA. If you go to hand and arm protection, there's a list of chemical resistance for protective gloves. Here's naphtha, and they rate nitrile gloves as being very good. These are the nitrile gloves that I like to use. They actually have like a textured surface on the fingertips, so you can grip your tools better. As for ventilation, you can open a window or do this outside. It really doesn't have much of an odor at all, and I think the amount of mineral spirits in here is pretty small. The main ingredients are basically 3 different types of waxes, and I think when you're working, if you keep the lid on it, that helps prevent it from evaporating too much. It's a good idea to put some cardboard down to protect your work surface. That way you won't get wax all over your desk. So here's my painting. It's a combination of watercolor and gouache. So you just open this up and take a paper towel and fold it up. You just dip a corner into it and start spreading it onto your painting. You don't want to rub too hard, but as you can see, there's very little or no color that comes off. And if you do get some color on your paper towel, just fold it over and use a clean spot. I try to cover every square inch and then I smooth it out. You could look at it from an angle, you can kind of see there are streaks in there, but I could just buff that right out. I think that looks pretty smooth. And then you want to get any gobs off the sides. So you just run the paper towel along the edge. Once you're happy with it, just set it aside and let it dry. So here's a gouache painting that I sealed months ago. And I wouldn't do this at home, but you can apply water to it and it just beads up, nothing happens to it. You wouldn't do that with an unsealed gouache painting, it would totally ruin it. Another option is Spectrafix, and this is based on the formula that Degas used to fix his pastel drawings. It only contains casein, water, and alcohol, and they market it as being non-toxic and odor-free. When I use it, I can only detect a faint smell of alcohol, and it's not overwhelming at all. It's very subtle. And if you compare that to the other spray fixatives, those come with a ton of warnings. They say extremely flammable, vapor harmful, and all these other scary warnings that they have on there. If you look at the safety data sheet for Spectrafix, you can look under the handling and storage warnings here, and it just says, precautions for safe handling, contains alcohol, do not spray in eyes. And that's basically it. And it says there might be a skin reaction in individuals with extreme sensitivity to casein. So unless you have a dairy allergy, you're probably not gonna have a problem. And it says this is a non-toxic product and is safe for use as directed. Here's the painting I'm going to seal, and the way that I normally do this is that I give it 3 light coats with the spray fixative, and then I apply a top coat of their natural glass varnish and medium. But you have to wait for it to be completely dry before you can do that. You'll want to put down cardboard to protect your surface from any overspray. So let's get started. So I'm going to apply the first coat to this painting. So here's the first coat on the painting. It's almost already dry. It's been like a couple minutes. You want to go light so it doesn't make the paint run or anything. This will be coat number 2 for the painting. It might look spotty for the first couple of coats, and that's partly because it's still wet. But once you get it fully coated, it should even out. For the final coat, I'll go a little bit heavier. So here's the final coat while it's still wet. It looks a little bit spotty, but as it dries, it should even out. It's been a full day since I've coated this, and here's the test sample. And here's what I'm referring to about testing your materials is this is an early test sample, and I sprayed it 3 times, and then immediately after like drying with the hairdryer, I tried applying the natural glass, and this red smeared a bit. And I thought it wasn't going to work, but then I waited 24 hours and applied it to this side, and it didn't smear at all. So I realized that casein might dry to the touch within a few minutes, but it really doesn't cure for like a day. So you need to wait a day before you can brush on the natural glass. Otherwise it might smear. So here's a test sample that I created recently with all the different gouache colors I have. This is Holbein gouache, and then this is graphite. It says 3 coats of Spectrafix on it that I sprayed on there yesterday. And then I'm going to coat it with the natural glass. Here's the brush I'm using. It's a Robert Simmons synthetic bristle brush, and the bristles are nice and soft. That's what you want. You don't want to use like a bristle brush that will scrape away at your gouache painting. You can see when I press down on it, there's very little resistance there, so it won't really damage the painting as I brush over it. I'm going to do the test sample first. You just want to like brush over it and leave it so you can see how that darkened the colors, but it won't be that dark when it dries. And I think this actually helps gouache paintings because when it dries to the matte surface like this, it looks lighter. And I think this brings it back to the state that it was in when you painted it. So there it is. I'll just leave that to dry. I don't want to disturb it. So I'll let that dry. I'll go side to side on this painting so that if it does streak, it will blend in more with the water. I don't think we'll have any issue. You just lay it down and just leave it. It helps if you look at it at an angle and you can see what you already covered, go back over any previous areas. Brushing it on is a little bit tricky. You have to just put it down and leave it. And if you want to do a second coat, let it dry for a full day and do the same thing. So it's had a chance to dry, and you can see I missed a spot here, and I'm not going to touch it up now. I'll wait a full day and put a second coat on here. But you can kind of see how the natural glass is glossier. I like the effect that it has on gouache. I feel like it brings back the depth. Because gouache dries to a matte finish, it looks lighter. I feel like this looks closer to how I painted it. Here's a painting that's got 2 coats on it. You can see the surface is glossier. So here's a side-by-side comparison. The painting on the left has the wax medium. The painting on the right is the Spectrafix, followed by 2 coats of natural glass. The wax medium has like a more satin finish. It kind of looks more like an oil painting. I think this kind of looks more like acrylic, the way the finish looks. I like them both, but if you're looking for something real fast and easy, the wax medium works well. But if you want something glossier, I would go with the Spectrafix. Both methods work really well, and the main benefit is you can display a gouache painting without having to put it behind glass. Up next, you can watch how I framed this 5x7 gouache painting. Thanks for watching.